Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Unleashed. I'm your host, Cody Hauk, and I have a very special guest with me today. I think this is going to be an absolutely incredible conversation. Ty and I have been talking backstage here already, some amazing things getting thrown down. I was like, man, I got to hit the record button on this because people have got to get to know Ty, his story, where he's come from, what he's doing now. So, guys, I welcome to the show my man, Ty Shane Howell. Ty, welcome to the Unleashed show, my brother.
Hey man, it's an honor to be here. Follow you, love you, everything that you're doing, and so I can't wait to go off the riff with you.
That is completely mutual, man. Me and Ty met at a networking event, I think earlier in the spring. I was sitting at home, saw the ad pop up on my thing, got dressed and ran to this networking event with my guy Thomas Evans and some other folks that I knew were going to be there. And me and Ty got the pleasure to meet. We've been connected ever since, bounced back and forth a lot on social. Ty does some badass stuff in email marketing. And we'll talk a little bit on that too. But Ty, this show is about getting deep, raw, dirty into where we've come from, what God has done in our lives, what He's pulled us from, and the victory that we get to experience today. So I want our audience to get to know you and your story, man. So I'm going to let you have the floor.
Well, that's a loaded question, but it's a great question. So basically, I would start with our past doesn't define us, and so our darkest moments are really the pathways to our greatest selves. And in life, we don't get to choose our starting points.
Mm.
And so what happens is man's free will, it negatively impacts us. And for my own personal experience, raised by a 13-year-old, first 4 years of my life, um, she was a victim. And, my birth dad was her stepdad. And so when you look at genetics, you look at the childhood exposures and the experiences. Um, I was the only way for me to get onto a path that wasn't going to be troubled was to go through a lot of pain and sacrifice. And so that's like almost the cost of man's free will. And so I like to say we spend every year after 18 undoing man's free will. And so that's kind of the byproduct of the freedoms that God has given us. And so addiction is the form of the battle that I had to sweat weather, as I know a lot of people are familiar with. So I'm not alone in this.
Yeah.
And so, incarceration and addiction, if you're from America, they're basically one and the same. If you are an addict, there is a very high probability that you have been incarcerated because that's just actually how the system is built. It's basically built for addicts. And so, uh, the only way through that is basically, facing those experiences. And if you've ever read The Secret, it talks about how basically as children, as we're growing up, we externalize all of these different things, and we internalize all these external things, and that's what becomes our identity.
Mm.
And so, for me specifically, because a child can't comprehend its environment, it can't comprehend its experiences, and so almost everything is going to have falsehoods within it. And so, for me personally, it wasn't until I met my birth mom at the age of 29 that literally I was able to, understand that, you know, how do I say this? I had a perspective shift, and it's no surprise I've been sober since 6 months after meeting my birth mom. I mean,
Mm.
hey, no surprise. And so, it was meeting her that I was like, oh, wow, I'm not forsaken. So I have forsaken tattooed across my knuckles. And I'm like, oh, this was actually the greatest act of mercy being taken away from her. And so that literally shifted at age 29 my entire like perspective of all these lies and these childlike interpretations of my experiences just literally got shifted upside down. And everything that I had that was hate based, was demonically, I would say like bondaged.
Mm,
It literally got released because I actually saw love in the pain. I saw love within everything that my childhood self had experienced. And so that was the turning point for me. And the most like magical part about it is if I'd have met my birth mom at 24, it wouldn't have been the same. If I'd have met her at 19, it wouldn't have been the same. I had to go through experiences to where I had the compassion and the understanding by having had seen other women and myself go through addiction to really have the depth of compassion that I had for her, where it's like you look at their experiences and their decisions from an entirely different light. And so when I did meet her and I got the closures, I heard more about the story. She's abandoned at 13, blamed for being abused. And then she was left to fend for herself. And then she just repeated the cycles of abuse to survive. My birth little sister died when I was 2 years old. That's when DCFS took me away. And so I was able to look at, a lot of those, childlike interpretations, with a completely different lens because I watched other women go through addiction. I'd seen the powerlessness. I'd experienced the powerlessness. Heck, I've been all over, I've been through the country in multiple different states, flying in Con Air, going to federal prison and all this other stuff for addiction. And so it was how do I say this? It was almost like the perfect storm for healing. And so that's when my life changed right there. And so before that, couldn't stay out of prison, couldn't stay sober. It was just literally I don't even know how to describe it. And so that's when I started to find God, and that's when I started to see beyond just my own experiences. And God is metaphysical; it's what we can't see. And so that's when my journey started there. And I mean, that right there is kind of where the new me was reborn, was meeting my birth mom. And I had to do a 3.5 year termination on $1,000 theft in order for God to be able to even give me the possibility of leaving the state that I was in to drive across country to meet her. And
mm.
so like, and even that, I literally just up and left one night. I had $13 to my name and I just left. And I just hopped Walmart to Walmart across country doing these little crowdsourcing app audits. And so, like, I built confidence. I literally didn't have what I needed. So, like, now in entrepreneurship, my ability to tap into faith and to tap in, I just kind of tap into these old experiences. And I'm like, hey, I didn't have anything I needed here, but God got me through. I didn't know it was God back then, but now that I have this relationship and I have this understanding, it's interesting how that experience in that time of my life it carries over through
Mm.
to today. And so yeah, so I mean that's kind of a runaround story. It's such a deep question to ask. I don't know where to start, where to go. So you got to give me a little guidance here on that end. But
I picked up a few things I'd love to start touching on, man. One, I mean, you and I both now share a deep-rooted belief in God, and He's worked some miracles in our life. I want to ask you, you've gone through some dark shit, man, and you're very transparent about it. I followed your story that you share on social media, guys. I'll drop Ty's social media links in the show notes for you guys to connect with him. Um, you've gone through some shit, man. Like seriously. Did you from at what age did you first feel a connection to God? Did you have a foundation of God or any kind of sense or belief in Him through your childhood, or was that something that came later down the road?
so I was adopted when I was 6 by an LDS family.
Okay.
Um, since then, so I don't want to get too like into my lens. But I've done a lot of diving. I've been into like what 9 different organized religions. Like I
Mm,
have gone and I put in my due diligence. We'll just say that. I wasn't a one and done with religion. I've seen women preach. I've gone to Christian Science. I've gone and spoken to Scientology. I've gone to like Baptist, Evangelist, Catholic. I've gone around. I explored, and then I studied sociology of religion in college as well. And so I shunned God because of my experience with organized religion. Religion was used as a form of punishment to me. Like Ty, you're grounded for the summer until you read the Book of Mormon, and I'm going to
Mm,
ask you a bunch of questions, and if you can't answer them, you're still grounded. That's what was used against me as a form of punishment. So just, for parents out there, be careful what you use for punishment because children are making associations constantly. And
mm,
so my parents literally shoved me away, not just from the organized religion, which I'm still shunned away from, but they shunned me away from God because as a child, once again, we don't have the ability to comprehend our experiences. And so I literally shunned God and the idea of God from that moment on at 15. And then a week later, when I told my parents, hey, I'm not going to church, what do? They sent me away to a group home. And I am so sure that that was the cherry on the icing that got me sent away.
mm.
And so those childhood experiences pushed me away. And so I had to go on a journey. I had to go, study in college. I had to go and step into these different churches, experience these different, environments and dynamics to come to an actual like empirical kind of driven, understanding.
Mhm.
And so that's why I say I follow Christ, not
Yeah.
man,
Yep.
because organized religion is, it's run by man. And so, so that's nothing against anyone who's watching this and whatever, because I mean, everything works for the good of God. And so, I'm not attacking anyone or anything. That's just been my experience.
I
And
love you sharing that, man, because I tell people a lot of times, and a lot of people experience church hurt, right? I've experienced it myself, and I had to go through a process of healing from that as well. And my wife and I recently returned to church, a church that I participated in their recovery ministry as I was coming through recovery. And I've loved this church from the minute I stepped in, but we live too damn far from it for me to drive up there every Sunday. Um, but it is so common for people to turn away from God because of something that someone has done in the name of God. And I think that, as you said, I think when that happens, it comes down to you're not following God, you're following man. And you're putting your faith in people, not in God.
yep.
And I always tell people, I've had the opportunity to speak on some stages in front of 500, 600 guys at a men's conference. I've led some recovery ministries. I did the street evangelism thing. Like, it's not my job to save somebody. It's my job to get someone to just have a conversation with God Himself. Because if you are truly seeking Him and having conversations with Him, damn, He will show you every bit of the truth that you need to know.
Yes.
One, I don't know if you follow Russell Brand or not, but I have absolutely loved watching Russell Brand's journey, and it lines up with what you've just said so well. And I'll tell you what, dude, I've watched his content and stuff recently. That dude looks like he has gotten 10 years younger since he found the Lord.
Yes.
And he's so joyful in the way he talks now. I've always been a fan of Russell Brand. I read his book Sobriety years ago, and it was incredibly impactful for me. But him going through a similar journey, experiencing several different types of religions, and doing his due diligence in it, and ultimately landing on the truth is in Christ. It incredible to watch, and I didn't mean to digress too much, but
Oh,
what
no.
you say and just
It's a
lined
good
up so
point.
well with that.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, how do I say this? Yeah, when you don't have the shell and you just have the experience, I think that's where like you can make those decisions for yourself. And so it looks different for everybody. And so like we all need different things, and God turns all bad for good. And so I think once you build that relationship from there, like to each their own. So I just want to be careful with this because like there's so many good people who have their own, ideals and their own ways of worshiping and all of that. And so one of my like over the past 90 days, God softened my heart so much. Extreme ownership has been a big part of it too. So
Hmm.
it's like even with my story now, if people follow me over the past 60, 90 days, I even talk about my story through a little bit of a different lens now. I take more accountability and I do less blaming. And I look at it more as like that was a rite of passage. I had to go through those things because I didn't pick my starting points, I didn't pick my genetics, and I didn't pick those childhood traumas. And so in order for me to have different outputs and outcomes than, my siblings, for example, that are actually blood siblings, or than my father or my mother, I had to go through, refinement by fire. I had to go through experiences that were going to be very, very, very painful because we were breaking generational curses and generational bondages that literally nobody else in my family has been able to break. And so I've basically been that generational, bondage breaker. And it's just been a very, very painful process for me.
Yep.
And so I've now like I've softened on a lot of those, and I try to not lead with hate. And I've realized that love is the answer. And so when people see things differently, we don't attack them because that puts them on the defense. And so the way that human nature is dictates that if you are extremely black and white and stern, and you are, how do I say this? If you reject people based on those things, they're never going to accept you. Once you reject somebody, they're not going to accept you when you lead with those, real like stern, black and white, my way or the highway, you're wrong, I'm right, and all of that. And it took me going on a fast. So I fasted for 72 hours, and then I took a little break, and then I fasted for 79 hours. And it was that second fast that I just had this complete enlightenment. I'm like, I'm doing everything wrong. I'm doing everything wrong. I have a message and I have a story, and I'm actually alienating myself from it being heard and it being
Mhm.
received by the way that I'm telling different pieces of my story, by the way that I'm allowing my lens in life to, illustrate different people, different things, and da 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 da. I'm throwing Americans into buckets. I'm doing all these different things, and it's even funny because I just went through my chats the other day, and this guy, he came and basically called me out, and he's all tattooed on his face to tell he's been to prison. He's like, "Hey Ty, I'm just gonna tell you, like you're doing it wrong, man. You need to da da da." I actually hearted it. I was like, "You're right, man." And now that I went through that, and I came back and saw this from around that time when I had this transformation, I was like, oh wow, you are right, man. Yeah, I'm actually gonna accept that. And you're some stranger, but like you're so spot on. And I just went through this, And so like that's been a big thing. So I try to be really like consciously aware with how I talk about things, because it's like you can tell your story, you can share your experience, and you can share your truth, but how you do it matters. Because if you really wanted to transform people and to impact people, you have to lead with love.
Hmm.
All this like divisiveness, even in my politics, I pulled back. So obviously I'm still like I share my truths, but how you share something matters. You can share a truth in 100 different ways.
Yep.
You can share an experience in 100 different ways, but different ways are going to have a far more compounding impact and effect on those who hear it. And so what I realized is I'm basically ostracizing my story and ostracizing the message that, my experiences have to share by the way that I'm perceiving, that process. And so um so like regardless of what somebody believes and regardless of where we're all at the end of the day, God turns all bad for good. And so everybody makes mistakes, everybody hurts people. We've all hurt people, and we've all been hurt. And so it's just like the thing with forgiveness. You have to give it to receive it. And so There's just so much power in, like, how we share our perspectives. Like when I say, "Oh, I follow Christ, not man," I'm very wary now to not attack people who, in maybe my perspective, are doing what I used to do that shun me away. That was the reason that I wasn't able to connect with God and connect with Christ because of how I interpreted those experiences. And so, just kind of on that note, like love really is the answer. I used to see people saying, "Oh, love is the answer, love is the answer," and I'm like, that's kind of that seems kind of soft, guys. Come on, like we need a little bit something a little bit more stern. Wars are fought with guns. They're not fought with love. But if you want your enemy to become anything less than an enemy that's trying to cut your throat, you've got to lead in a different way. And you got to lead in a way that makes them receptive to what you have to say. And they're not going to
Mm.
hear you. They're not going to listen to you if you're attacking them. They're not going to do any of that. And so,
I'm
um,
preaching gold, right?
yeah. So,
So,
so that's such an important concept. I had to throw that in there,
dude,
man.
let me share it. It's crazy you even go that route, man, and it further solidifies the purpose of this conversation. So I used to run a ministry called Kingdom Lives, and I'm working on revamping it and relaunching it right now. Hint, hint. But the
Yeah.
the Bible verse that was the core foundation of Kingdom Lives was Revelation. We overcome by the blood of the Lamb and not by our hate, not by our biblical knowledge, not by, you know, Bible thumping people. What does it say? By the word of our testimony, by telling people the victory that we've had in our life because of God. And
Amen.
simultaneously, when I used to teach discipleship classes in my old church, I would hammer them over the head with you have to earn the right to share your belief with someone. They have to know you care about them before they will give a shit about what you know or what you have to say. They better feel that you care about them and like you said, that you love them. You better have led with love with that person and create a relationship. And the way that we live our lives in that, I truly believe that if you're living your life in a Christ-like way, and as you said, leading with love, at some point, those people are going to ask you, why do you live your life this way? Why do you
Yeah.
treat me this way? And that is when you have the right to now say, you know what? Let me tell you about this man called Jesus that did these things in my life that allows
Yeah.
me to live my life this way because 10 years ago, I overdosed. 10 years ago, I was a goddamn thief and an addict, and I should have been locked up too. But 10 years ago, the old me died that night that I overdosed and a new me rose.
Man.
It, love everything you're saying there, man. And that is the message right there. That's it. It's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's about I love you and I care about you and I'm going to live life with you regardless. I love you sharing that, man.
Well, and the reason I think it's such an important message right now as well is with politics and all this stuff just
Mm-hmm.
ending, like the last 30 days of the election, like I pulled back. Like I'm a marketer, man. So I understand different levers. I understand how to connect with people. I I just can't help it. But then I did help it. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And so it's like I basically was confused. 'Cause I'm like, crap, like how do I share something without being polarizing and getting people riled up in this, and this? Because you can still have your truth and have your viewpoint. But once again, how you go about sharing it and how you present it, it matters. And so
I would love
it
people to tally up, truthfully, the amount of business they've ever gained by sharing their political views, because I guarantee you that number is a goddamn goose egg.
yeah.
I bet you the unknown number of people who won't do business with them because of the way they share their political views is in the hundreds.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, no, I can agree with that more than I ever did, because I've got some relationships that are built because of my political beliefs that are with far more wealthier people than me. And so like I learned that there's a small edge to it, but when you look at it from like a Christ-like perspective and all this other stuff, like the only thing that I don't know, being polarizing and sharing those views in a certain way, because like you can share political views without it being necessarily political, because now you're just talking about morals, values, and beliefs. And I'm
Yeah.
real big on morals, values, and beliefs. And so there's definitely a more tactful way to go about it. And you are 1000% right. If you just stay neutral on the business front, you're obviously going to, reject less versus, the littler that you could potentially attract. But yeah, no, 100%. You're the sales guy too. You're the one who understands the stuff far better than I do.
Sir, we're gonna segue a little bit right here because I want to give you an opportunity to let people know what you do from a business standpoint as well, because you are an absolute gangster in business. And I do want to touch on that too, because I don't think I've seen anyone go nearly as depth into cold email marketing as I see you go, and the value that you just give away for free. So
Oh
tell
yeah.
people about 10x cold leads, man.
So basically, as you guys have all experienced, we're in the AI era, and so it's important to understand how the brain works. And so we're in the information overload era. And so cognitive biases are the brain's process of fighting information overload. And so when it comes to, all the cold messages you get and, DMs in all the different platforms, email, you're just getting desensitized more than ever. And your brain's indexing different things so it can associate and predict. It's just like if you're on Facebook and you get like the notification, like post, like post, like post, like post, like post, you're like, oh crap, here comes the pitch in the DMs. 9 times out of 10, the pitch comes in the DMs, and 10 times out of 10, it sucks. And
Yep.
so, and so when you're doing lead generation and you're trying to capture attention, you have to understand that this is what you're working up against so you can position yourself to basically circumvent, avoid the negatives, hack into the positives, or just like they say, the top 1% of salesmen do, the 99% don't. And what they're doing is they're avoiding all of those, associations to past experiences. And so all we do and what we have done and are doing is we take basically personalization, data aggregation on the company and lead level to as far as we need to go to basically mimic what a real human conversation and interaction would be through cold channels. And now with AI and automation, you can automate it. And so what I'm currently doing, what we're trying to do right now is because these AI agents. So just so everybody knows, like big wake up call, 2025 is the year of the AI agents. And this is where all the different AIs are going to be working like synergistically with one another to perform very complex tasks in business. Like businesses from HR to financing, all this stuff is going to be a bunch of these little AI agents that are checking one another, where it's just like the agent GPT stuff,
Hmm.
but on steroids. And so that's where we're moving. And so in marketing, for example, in cold email world right now, the agency holds on to the engine. Well, once these AI agents, all this stuff comes, there's going to be no reason to have any sort of recurring revenue in marketing. Like that's literally going to the graveyard.
Mm.
So knowing and understanding, so Patrick Bet David's, your next 5 moves, that's kind of where I'm at right now. And so we're positioning ourselves, we're solving for fully automated cold email systems from loading the leads to qualifying, segmenting, prospecting, like all that process that an SDR used to have to do manually. You got to go visit these websites, check out these different things, verify these different things. Well, you can just reverse engineer that all back to AI and tech. And so we just stack the right techs and automate all those different processes. And then the messaging, we use hyper personalized video strategies, we use, hyper personalized text. But more importantly, now it's stepping away from going straight for the sale in the first pitch or the first, in the first interaction. And it's like, how do you simulate using AI a natural flow, just as if you're like walking down the street and you're like, oh, hey, man, those are nice glasses. Where'd you get those? You have a quick little banter. Then you can get into the nitty gritty and the deep stuff, tell your life story. But you don't just start with the life story. You don't just start there. You got to build a
Mhm.
little bit of rapport. You've got to build that little bit of like, know, and trust, at least a little bit of it. And
Mhm.
so that's basically what we do, and we've been positioning. And like I said, Patrick Bet David's your next 5 moves. I think right now, if it doesn't matter what industry you're in, if you run a business and you are digital, you have an opportunity right now to position yourself ahead of your competitors. And so that's what we do, what we focus on. It's obviously cold email and lead generation, but it's AI and it's tech stacks. And so the best way to put it right now is the future is the three A's. It's AI, APIs, and then it's automation.
Mhm.
And when you put those three together, you literally have like what I was talking where the future's going with these little AI agents that are working together, doing all these different things. You have a business that can run on its own. Um, I mean, I hate to say it, but bookkeepers, they're on their way out the door. VAs, they're on their way out the door. Actually, they're basically already, halfway out the door. Like the future is changing. We got browser automations. Claude just came out with browser automation stuff. Like the stuff starting to get complex to where these AIs can read, UI user interfaces, and it's not just Chat GPT and all this stuff. And so we're positioning ourselves, we're solving problems that our industry isn't willing to solve because they lose money if they solve it. It's just like big pharma. If they solve cancer, guess what? There goes, $400 billion of revenue.
Hold
So they're
on,
not going
Ty.
to
You're
do.
telling too much truth on the show now. You're telling too much truth.
Yeah. So they're not going to solve because there goes $400 billion. And so, but the thing about it is if you know the trajectory, if you're following, like if you read Life Force by Tony Robbins, like if you understand where the world is going, you can't prevent it. So you might as well position yourself to embrace it. And so that's what we're doing in cold email is we're like, hey, we don't care what everybody else is doing. We know the inevitable is coming. So we're going to start solving and positioning ourselves and building the reputation of where we're going to be in a year, even though we're not. And that's why I like Patrick Bet David's, your next 5 moves. Such a good book because it just
Back there, I
really
got
like it's
stacked
like,
behind me.
yeah, yeah. So I just read that and literally like the way my mind's thinking about it, I'm like, okay, it's okay to be a little bit right, little bit, out of place right now because I'm positioning myself for to be ahead of what's coming. And so that's just kind of my little message to everybody in any business. You have a unique competitive advantage right now. Take your industry where number one, the uneducated around AI aren't willing to go, but number two, you're able now to kind of trajectory based position yourself for the future to embrace it, but become a leader and to become I love this right now because Julie McCoy's first movers, to be a first mover within what is coming because you can't stop it. It is coming,
Mhm.
and so you have to accept it.
Here's the thing with a lot of what Ty is talking about, you guys, and you guys that follow me on all social platforms know that I am a huge proponent for speed and paying people to do the shit that you can't do or that will take you a long time to do. And I just made a post on this earlier today when I said, stop asking people if you can take them to lunch to pick their brains and start asking them to send you an invoice. It will take you years for many of us. Some of us are learners. If you got a Rogan type brain and you take limitless drugs and whatever, you might be able to go and scan Ty social media because he tells you exactly how to do all this stuff for free and will give you the Google Docs and all the layouts and everything and how to do it yourself. And you're going to look at it like me and not even know where to start. Or you pay the guy that knows exactly what the hell what he's doing and speed to market is 10x, 100x in this case, probably. And you're up and rolling and you're out ahead of the curve because you cut somebody else a check that knew what the hell they were doing to begin with. And that's a big mindset shift I'm pushing every damn one of you to. If you're a Dan Martell follower, you know Dan says poverty stricken people trade their time for money, and wealthy people trade their money for their time. And that's not just your personal time, that's speed to market, that's getting things like this implemented well ahead of your competition. So Ty's ripping, man. If you need to get ahead of the curve when it comes to your marketing, you need to connect with Ty. I will tell you right now, don't reach out to him to kick the tires and expect that you're going to get this for $100 a month, because Ty is a high ticket service, but you're going to get serious results. That's all I've got. I'm going to drop a link for Ty's social medias in the show notes here. I'm going to put some info on Ty's company and what they do down in the show notes, so you guys can reach out and connect with Ty if you're serious. Again, expect a high ticket price tag to come with this. Don't connect with Ty and waste his time with bullshit. I ask you to respect any guest of the show's time whenever it comes to booking time with them and getting to know what they do. Ty, you got anything else?
Man, I just got to commend you once again for everything that you're doing, watching your journey, seeing you take 2024 seriously and sharing that journey with people. There's so much power in sharing your journey. And so, just as you're doing, just as I do, anyone listening to this, you've got to share your story. You don't know whose life you're going to impact. You don't know who God is going to work through you to help. You never know. And so, silence is the most selfish thing that we could possibly do. And so that is my challenge, and that is my acknowledgement to you, Cody, for everything that you're doing. You inspire me. Seeing you stick to the health and everything that you're doing, hearing now about everything that you're building, it just excites me, man. And I know that it excites other people. And anybody listening to this, you might feel like your story doesn't matter, that you don't matter, or it's not significant, or A, B, C, D, whatever the excuse
Mm.
might be. But if you impact even just one person, you can't even quantify the generational, the you can't quantify how much of an impact that can have on future generations, because saying one thing could change the trajectory of a father, which means that it changes the trajectory of the children. And so we live in a world where God wants to do the impossible, and you never know what He's waiting for you to do and to have the courage to say and share. So,
Amen to that. And that's how we're going to close. You guys, thanks for joining us for another episode here. We'll see you on the next one.